So that's the individual. So in a marriage, how do we bring that together? And what we've learned is like your harmony used to be a negative for me because I felt like you're always taking the other
Right.
side. And
And we
what
had
you're
a conversation about that.
and we actually had to have a
Hmm.
conversation about
Hmm.
that. And what you learn is it becomes a strength once you understand each other.
Right.
Not only did I have to understand that her strength was harmony, so therefore she was going to always be finding, well, you need to understand.
Mhm.
She changed her vocabulary from you need to understand to more things of like, I think what they're saying is,
Yeah. Yeah. What I see,
and what I see, yeah, things like that.
maybe I'm wrong, but what I see is maybe they had something in their childhood that creates this thing, whatever that would look like. So
Hmm.
yeah, it was changing the wording, but we grew together in that, and it really elevated our marriage when we're in, especially as we minister to couples together. It helps us to be very attuned to the things that are going on across the table from us, not in a negative way, but in a very real, impactful way, because then we can have a conversation of what did you get from that? And I can say,
Mm,
well, here's what I heard. And you're like, oh man, yeah, me too. And so then
right.
we're able to help somebody better because we bring that together.
Well, welcome to Pillow Talk. I'm Grant. This is my wife, Stephanie. And after almost 38 years of marriage, we've discovered how to communicate for better understanding and yoke our differences to pull stronger toward a common purpose.
As certified marriage coaches, we want to help reignite passion and connectedness in your marriage through intimate, authentic, and unguarded conversations. Now let's have some pillow talk.
Let's do it. All right, welcome to Pillow Talk. We are back for another
Episode.
We kind of got to do that like Vincent Price
I know.
episode.
Episode.
So what we've been or started talking about, I guess a week ago, was the 15 ways to thrive in marriage. And so we want to continue on that. And what we're talking about is awareness today. So just quickly, when you think of awareness, what kind of just comes to your mind? I mean,
I think awareness is when the light bulb comes on for the first time. Awareness is not the stage where everything's finished and everything's laid out. It's the moment when you realize there's something I need to do different.
yeah, yeah, that's good. So what we want to do is, there's personal awareness, and then there's bringing that awareness together in marriage. And I think that's where a lot of times we just kind of forget that we're a team.
Oh, yeah, that's
And
good.
so
Yeah.
it's really important that we always remember we're a team. And when one of us becomes aware of something that maybe the other one's noticed for a while,
Did you
that
look at me?
it probably shouldn't be a time to say, well,
Finally.
duh, yeah, exactly. Finally, uh, but it's a chance to celebrate, honestly,
Oh, it really
and
is. Yeah,
and
I
and
think
you,
that's a great way to say
yeah.
it.
So I think that's
Well,
so
I think what's cool is I'm sure we're not the only couple that's like this. I don't know if it's I'm slow or if it's that you're impatient, but anytime something needs to change in our life, God starts to work on my heart like 6 months ahead of time. And when it's time to actually make the move, it's like all of a sudden you're aware of it.
yeah,
And so that's a really great contrast, but I think it's a great segue
sure.
into knowing your spouse and how we each hear in those growth stages, and recognizing that it might take two different styles to really have a good confirmation of things in your marriage. And I think that works really well for us.
It
So
does, and I think it's awesome that you're aware of that.
it's awesome that I'm aware that I'm slow. And so God needs to give me a lot of time. Yeah.
So
I am a late adopter.
yeah, so what we want to talk about, is does your marriage have like a sense of direction? Because you have to know who you are individually as well as a married couple. So it starts on, I think it starts with becoming aware of yourself first, because you have nothing to bring to the table if you aren't aware of who you are.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're just tripping through life completely oblivious, that's wow. Yeah, that doesn't help anybody.
No.
So I think that even if you're not in the practice of trying to learn more about yourself, I think that that is a very good thing to do, whatever that looks like for you and your personality. But having a sense of direction of, you do have to know who you are. And so, because if you don't know who you are and where you are right now, first of all, then you certainly can't assign a direction, because if you can't go somewhere if you don't know where you're starting.
Right.
You got to have both. You have to have where you're going. It has to be mapped out, but you also have to know where you're starting from. If I want to go to, Hawaii, well, I can't just say, I'm going to go to Hawaii. I have to know where I'm starting from. Am I starting in Oklahoma? Am I starting in California?
Mm-hmm.
You have to know. And then as you know where you are, then you begin to move towards what you want. We always talk about asking that question, what do you really want? So in a marriage, that question is being asked, because you never get to where you're going, and that's going to change. But you do have to know where you're starting.
All right. Now, I know, like, we were married at 17 years old. And so when you start that young, there's no doubt you don't know who you are yet. So when you come into a marriage bringing two people that have no clue even who they are, it's no wonder the divorce rate goes from 50% up to like 75, 80%, because it's so much more difficult, because you're working out all those little details in real time.
Yeah.
And so that makes it.
Yeah. There's no, we talked about intentionality in that last week. There's no intentionality in that with that. You kind of, what's the saying that, wherever you are, there you are. So you're going to bring yourself to wherever you are. So either grow yourself to become a better person so that when you get there, it's the best version of yourself for the people in that space of your life.
Yep. So if we're going to grow ourselves individually, I think knowing our strengths is one of the first things we need to start to learn.
Mm-hmm.
There's tests for that, by the way, Strength Finders test. And that's, who was it that wrote that book?
Marcus Buckingham.
Marcus Buckingham. You can say it loud inside the day. You don't have to whisper it to me. They see you giving me the hint right there.
Is that right? There's actually, you really put me on the spot there. There's actually another person.
What's the name of it? It's just called Strength Finder 2.0. That's really what I was looking for.
Yeah.
The author may not be. It's a Clifton Strength Finder.
Clifton's Strength Finder. So, you put me on the spot, babe.
Yeah, well,
that's not my strength.
I'm aware that that's usually your strength for me.
It's not my strength.
You've been bailing me out for years. So anyway, that's one way to start discovering your strengths, and you don't want any of those things to ever bottleneck you in where you start having an excuse of saying, well, that's just who I am then.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's not assume that people know. Let's not go into the assumption gap that people know what a strength is, because a strength is not necessarily a talent. If you're a great singer, that's a talent that you have. That's something you're naturally good at, but it's not necessarily a strength. A strength is something like, let's just talk about some of ours. One of my strengths is a strength of harmony. So what that looks like is that when I'm if there's more than two people in a room, I naturally look to see the value in everybody, and I'm going to make sure that everybody knows the value of somebody else. So it kind of creates a balance in a room, but it also can work as a weakness against me, because then I can never find that space where I'm able to side with somebody, because I'm always looking for harmony. And then one of yours, for example, is, give one of yours.
Well, like one of mine's definitely responsibility,
which is also one of mine.
Yeah. We'll share a couple or three of them. But like in responsibility, it creates an extreme weight when not only you feel like you're being held back from being responsible and doing what you say you're going to do. Like me, if you're on time, you're late, because responsibility is so strong that I will get physically ill about 5 minutes till. I mean, I can just feel it coming on. And it's because, I just feel like I'm lying to you if I don't show up when I say I'm going to. The problem that strength then becomes a major burden, not only for me, but even more so for like you, if it wasn't your strength. Luckily it is for us, helped a lot. But, I got other people that's just like, well, I'll just get there when I get there. It's like, well, I won't be there waiting because, you're lying to me if we say 7 and you don't show up till 7:01.
Sure. So I think knowing what your strengths are, definitely, because it's going to help you in situations where if you come up against a challenge or some tension in your marriage, knowing yourself in that way, even at that top level, I'm also an achiever. So knowing that helps you to understand that I'm not okay with not finishing a project. I am not okay with not finishing strong. So it's a strength that's innate in who I am. It's how God wired me. And it helps me do the things that I would be talented in doing, but it's a strength. So it's a little different than a talent. So if you want more information on that, definitely go to Strength Finders, Finders, Strength Finders. and dive into that a little bit. And there's other assessments like Enneagrams, things like that, that help you understand your personality better. But all those things are great tools
Oh,
to
definitely.
help you know yourself, because it also helps you to navigate. If you care at all about other people,
Mhm.
and if you really want to be a better version, if you don't, then this podcast isn't for you anyway. But if you want to be a better version of yourself, to have better impact, and to really truly spread that thing that God has put inside of you to impact the world with, then you need to know yourself so that you can grow yourself.
Right. So that's the individual. So in marriage, how do we bring that together? And what we've learned is, like, your harmony used to be a negative for me, because I felt like you're always taking the other
Right.
side, and
And we had a conversation about that.
and we actually had to have a
Mhm.
conversation about
Mhm.
that. And what you learn is it becomes a strength once you understand each other.
Right.
Not only did I have to understand that her strength was harmony, so therefore she was going to always be finding, well, you need to understand.
Mhm.
She changed her vocabulary from "you need to understand" to more things of, like, I think what they're saying is,
Yeah. Yeah. What I see,
and what I see, yeah, things like that.
maybe I'm wrong, but what I see is maybe they had something in their childhood that creates this thing, whatever that would look like. So
Mhm.
yeah, it was changing the wording, but we grew together in that, and it really elevated our marriage when we're in, especially as we minister to couples together. It helps us to be very attuned to the things that are going on across the table from us, not in a negative way, but in a very real, impactful way, because then we can have a conversation of, what did you get from that? And I can say, well, here's what I heard. And you're like, oh man, yeah, me too. And so then
Right.
we're able to help somebody better because we bring that together.
Yeah.
We bring those strengths together.
And that, I think that also works in the same way of, uh, like, I have Relator, and that's one that you don't. And so for you, you'd be happy, like I always said, with the elevator speech.
That's harmony.
And yeah, let's just get to know
Yeah.
each other real quick, and I'm out of here. And I'm more like, oh, now that we get to know them, I got to really know them. And so we're able to put those things together, and then we're not deficient in an
We
area
work so
now.
good.
It works
Where
because
you have to look at the room before you can work the crowd. I'm going to go in and work the crowd and then stand back in the corner.
yeah.
I mean, it's like we almost take opposite roles, but it really fits us well when we go into situations like that. So that's strengths, knowing strengths of yourself and in your marriage, but
Mhm.
also there's weaknesses, and it's not about focusing. You can't, if you have a weakness, let's think about, we talk about the 4 pillars of intimacy. Let's say there's a weakness in a structure, physically. Well, you don't ignore that, but you also don't focus on it to the point that you just get frantic about it.
Mhm.
So noticing a weakness looks like we just discussed. I noticed that anytime somebody is in a room with us, you always take their side over mine. That was a weakness that my harmony was creating. So that was a weakness I addressed, and we figured out, but we don't dwell on that.
Right.
So weaknesses are not something that, it's not about trying to elevate work to get rid of your weakness. When you focus on your strengths, your weaknesses typically will automatically fall into line because they're usually related.
Yeah. No. And I'm one that I definitely am very much a believer in the find your strengths, build on those.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, what Stephanie said just a second ago was vital. She noticed that one of her strengths was becoming the
Mhm.
weakness. That's something you can change. That's something we were able to work on and change.
Because it's awareness again.
Right.
It's being aware and helping each other see that awareness.
Yes. So that's where to start, because you can make your strengths great.
You can.
It's really difficult to
Yeah.
make a weakness even good.
Right. What
But
does John Maxwell say? You can take a weakness, is it weakness? And maybe it's a 4 in something, and you can get it to a 5. If you take a strength that might be a 4, you can bump it all the way to 10.
right.
Because a strength is created to grow. A weakness is created to crumble. So you
Right.
don't want to focus on that too much. So
So
another way to grow yourself in your marriage, especially, but individually too, especially if you've been raising kids for a long time, is understand and really focus on the awareness of, what are you interested in? Okay, that's a hobby, that's a talent, whatever that would be. Have those discussions. Talk about what's interesting to you, and they're probably going to be different. Don't be afraid of different interests. One of the things that we do, giving away a little secret sauce here, but one of the things in the reboot that we do, we help couples identify interest, and we also show them that when you see an interest that your spouse has written out right there, that is a great way to plan a surprise date night. Okay.
Yep.
People talk about, well, I don't really know what they want. Like, okay, list out your interests right there, guys. Right there. When your wife gives, there's right there written out wonderful ways to show your spouse you love them. You don't have to I don't play golf. I play at golf. I don't play golf. I'm not a golfer, but I remember years ago, that was such a thing that you loved so much, and we would watch it on TV. So I did it because you loved it. You were so interested in that, and we were poor. So all we could do was watch golf, but we began to have, you began to have favorite golfers. So they became my favorite golfers.
Right.
And then we began to have conversations, and then we were blessed to actually get to go to some really great golf tournaments together. And it to this day, if I had the choice of going outside and playing in my garden or going golfing, I'm going to pick gardening, but I'm able to step into your interest,
Right.
because I'm interested in you. And so there are going to be some things as married couples that you can kind of find space that you can be okay interested in, even if it's not your big thing.
Right. Well, like I'm not a gardening freak, but I am a person that really enjoys helping people.
Yes.
Well, so even though for me to get started in the garden is like pulling teeth, it's like by the time we're going, it's like, no, when I walk away from this, I want it to be the way she wants it.
Yeah.
And
so
we're able to, And,
Yeah.
it's just like, you may not enjoy the whole initial beginning of the golf as you do, but you end up enjoying, even if it's just going and riding in the cart with it.
You just love it. You love it. And it's something you're interested in. So
yeah. So, after that, I just think, it's taking those strengths and your weaknesses, figuring those out, figure out how to blend them together, filling out, and then start working on those interests. Because, here's the thing: if we're still clashing over the first two, we're not going to be looking to get together with our interests, right? So that's kind of what that is. So
looking to be away from you,
but no. After that, there's three kinds of for a couple when it becomes like just helping you find your direction.
Mm-hmm.
There's like three different ways to kind of do that.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Would you say kind of three different stages or three different categories of this? Kind of depends on how we want to look at it.
I don't know. I guess, but you figure it out.
Yeah. Use the word you want to. Yeah.
So
there are three ways in finding a direction that people land in when they're trying to seek direction.
But I think this is really good for coming on the end of interest. Couples sometimes just don't know what they would like to do. Yeah. So what that does is it causes a confusion. Mm-hmm. And again, it can begin in you as personally. If I bring confusion because I don't know what I want, then, or what I'd like to do, then I bring that into the marriage as the singular. So it's not that we don't know. Stephanie may know exactly, but I don't. So therefore, when I bring that in, there's nothing to blend.
And I think too, besides even just interest, even when you're talking about direction in your marriage, sometimes you'll accidentally fall into something, but if you're not intentional about that and you don't know what you're looking for, then you're not going to repeat that. Mm-hmm. And so then it's, you get confused because you're like, well, 6 months ago, things were going great. I'm confused. I don't know what's going wrong. Right. Because 6 months ago, you were accidentally doing things right, but you weren't actually seeking direction together. So that's why you stay confused. And then there are couples where in seasons of marriage where maybe you do know what you want to do, but you just don't do it.
Right.
So there again, you fall into that lazy habit of not being intentional. I mean, we say that all the time, but that's what it is. You have to walk out the things you intend to do.
Well, yeah. And if you don't walk it out, you become frustrated. And, I love what Jeremy Pearson said one time. He said, frustration is the distance between expectation and reality. So, the expectation of wanting what you want and the reality is you're not doing to get what you want causes a frustration automatically.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's another thing. Confusion and frustration, those are two different things you can identify maybe why your marriage is stuck or why you're not finding a direction is because you don't even know what you want to do. And then you know it, but you're just not doing it.
Right. Absolutely.
So marriages that are fulfilled, though, that are experiencing fulfillment,
they are flash.
yeah.
That's when, a marriage knows what to do and they're doing it.
Yeah. It's
And
the
when you're
whole
doing that, it
kit and
becomes very
caboodle.
fulfilling. We've talked about intimacy a lot and the 4 pillars over the last few months. And you take every one of those 4 pillars, and that's, physical, spiritual, emotional, and intellectual. If you are growing in that area and then you're walking it out, it's very fulfilling.
Absolutely.
And again, it always starts with communication. The reason we say you can end frustration with better communication is because it's just freaking true.
Well, so many things are just miscommunications. They're not even any big, there are some big issues in marriage and in life. Absolutely. I think we're all smart enough to know what those are. But 50% of the marriages that get divorced, the huge number of that is just, I just don't like you anymore. I don't get you. I don't understand you, because you're not talking about the things.
And most of those big issues even are a result, because without communication, there's no connection. Without connection, you're not going to stay strong.
True.
And for too long, there's that crack in the marriage, and all of a sudden you make it's not that you plan to go out and do something wrong.
Right.
Whatever it is, it's not that you plan to become a drug addict or have an affair, any of those things.
Right.
It's just all of a sudden you looked up and it's one day.
It's healing that pain some other way. Yeah.
Exactly. So we want to thank you for joining us here on Pillow Talk, and we'd ask you to go to our website, foreverwithpurpose.com, and you can find a link to everything we've got, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Oh, okay.
I knew there was another one. So
all the platforms
that we're on will be there. So we appreciate you taking your time to be with us again, and join us on the next Pillow Talk.